Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Genshin Impact. Sadly, I am not on the screen. It is way too late, and I've already had my shower, and I look like a little bit of a mess. But that does not mean we stop making videos and stop covering the game. So alas, I tell you, my friends, we are going to get into Venti's banner. By the way, I actually didn't talk to you guys about this a couple days ago because I knew this was Among Us. We're going to get right into this immediately when it comes out day one, so I figured it wasn't exactly necessary to cover it 2 days early. I don't want to spam you guys with too many videos. So let's go over, first of all, the new characters. We got Venti. We got Wolf Boy Extraordinaire. We got Best Girl Sucrose. We got Noelle, which people love a lot. And yeah, it's okay. So the only character that I'm a little bit unsure of is Noelle. She's fine and can be very, very good, but she requires a weird kind of investment, whereas the other characters I find, well, with the exception of Sucrose, but in my opinion, Sucrose has a much higher ceiling. That doesn't mean Noelle is bad in any way, shape, or form. If you like the character, you can build her and make her absolutely lovely. Now, something that you guys have been hearing all of this week is how amazing Venti is. And yes, Venti is fantastic, and again, people have already iterated that Venti's constellations are not that good unless you get past his first one. After his first one, they're actually pretty interesting. They lower Animo resist shred, so he's good for Xiao in that regard as well. All that stuff is pretty noteworthy. Now, let's get into the test arena. Well, first of all, recommendation for the banner, go for it. It's really good with the exception of Noelle, but even Noelle can be very viable and very good. But yes, this is a banner that's pretty goddamn great. And yes, Venti is as strong as you think he is. I've been a Venti person since the very beginning of the game. I waited and re-rolled accounts until I got him, and turns out he was one of, if not the absolute best character in the game, and I can attest to that. He is insane. Now, one thing that I feel like there's kind of a debate right now whether you should wait for Rosaria and Child. I don't think that's entirely founded because how easy Venti is to build. Venti is good without anything, and yeah, whereas Tartaglia, his constellations do help him a great deal. It lets you back-to-back his ult. Now, yes, you can just play him as a side DPS and that'd be fine, but at least unless you're like me, I don't really want to play a side DPS. Like, you know, that's why I was so lenient on Hu Tao, but then finally I found out that Hu Tao actually can have almost 100% uptime if you just, by the time you switch back to her, yeah. I don't think Tartaglia is that same way. That's not to say Tartaglia is not a beast. Anyways, I digress. I think Venti's the banner is as valuable as people have been saying. Now, I will be saying there are some characters coming in 1.5, but that's not this video. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into Venti. Weird sentence, but I'm not going back and re-recording this. Okay, now when getting into Venti's skills, they're absolutely busted. Yeah, they gave him a very high talents. They also gave him his new signature bow, which is a weapon almost signed, sealed, and delivered to Venti. It is his signature weapon, etc. It is so good, and it's kind of surprising they do this for Kaching. Maybe just because Venti's already loved by the community because his power and utility. But I digress. You got great stats, you got Animo support power, you got pretty decent crit chance. It's just really good. Now, if you guys don't know about Venti's bow is actually pretty fantastic. It kind of scales, it kind of is like a micro Sucrose, but with the benefit of still being able to play Venti. But yeah, it like shares attack percentage and also elemental mastery. When you use your ult or E. I think it's ult, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, it's amazing. And if you get max refinement on it, of course, it's going to get crazy. It's a 5-star weapon. Any weapon that's 5-star and max refined is pretty nutty. Although I will say the new weapons are coming out are even nuttier. I digress. Now, if you guys don't know anything about Venti and why he is so good, he's basically the CC king. He basically pulls everything into a ball, allowing you to micro hit everything. So yeah, you're spreading damage between the whole field, and also a lot of elemental reactions have AoE based reactions, and things can kind of just get nutty in that regard. Not only that, but the set bonus that most animal characters actually wield is a Viridescent Veneer, which basically lowers elemental resistance based on whatever element you swirl, which Venti can constantly output a swirl. We're going to talk about Sucrose, and she is fantastic, but she's fantastic for damage amplification and not necessarily for damage shred and things like that, although she can do that as well, but she kind of demands a little bit more elemental mastery, which Venti just has yeah, Venti's a different kind of beast. There's a reason why people say he's so overpowered is because he trivializes the game to some extent, meaning you don't even have to really play, and you almost always have his ult on cooldown if you have him even built for the slightest bit of energy recharge. And yeah, now I will say the only thing that Venti falls apart in, when he fights big enemies, you have to really lead your ult shot, and you kind of have to drag them into it, and it's not that very good because it's not very meant for really damage based, although you can build for damage, but it's not like that. The good news is that Venti also requires no artifacts because his ult is just that crazy. If you have just an energy recharge weapon, it's going to be good enough for him to constantly keep his ult up and constantly keep enemies at least away from you, not damaging you, and keeping them clumped up so that you can share the damage that you're using with any other DPS. One more negative to Venti is his suck power puts enemies into the air, getting them out of the range of certain characters, i.e. melee characters. So if you happen to have an Wong, absolutely fantastic. If you happen to have a archer character that's really viable, i.e. Genyu, fantastic. If you happen to have maybe some of the new magic characters coming in the future, then that probably would work really well as well. Now, the only gameplay tip I have for Venti after playing him for such a long time is when you use your ult, wait a couple seconds and then use your E. That way you're gaining particles back into an empty vessel so that you can recharge your elemental skill for its next usage, as well as if you don't want to use it immediately because an enemy will be getting sucked towards your swirl basically, and if you activate your E, it sometimes misses. So wait until everyone arrives in your swirl and then activate your E, and if you haven't built for anemo damage, that's going to be a huge chunk of damage as well. Good stuff. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about our girl Sucrose, the cutest and most fantastical character in the game. Now, for those guys who did not know, when they really built Sucrose pretty well, even though they didn't have Constellation. Now, if you're unaware, Sucrose massively benefits from Constellation. You get 2 of her E's, really allowing her to dip into Venti's kind of wheelhouse of CC. But the thing that makes Sucrose absolutely insane is the fact that she shares a percentage of her elemental mastery. So a lot of the simplified builds for Sucrose, you can do a lot. You can make her a tank if you want, or make her not a tank, sorry, a DPS if you want. A little bit hard to do, but you can do it. You can also build her for being just an amplification stick, or stat stick, so to speak. Get as much elemental mastery as you possibly can, and give her a book that increases your attack percentage when you switch off of her, and she just gets unbelievably nutty. She amplifies elemental mastery, which amplifies elemental reactions. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is Sucrose. Fantastic, absolutely worth buying. If you happen to get her, she's amazing to build, especially if you're having trouble with the game. She can trivialize stuff really, really fast, especially if you don't have really good DPSs and you're just getting really shitty with artifacts and you're just trying to get into the game and you're pretty late on it. Again, she can amplify your damage to an incredible extent. Good stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we can't play with Noelle. So unfortunately, also I have no information about the character. So yes, I know she can be very, very viable. You can use her. All of those things. I do feel like she's a little harder to make work than other characters we've talked about, with the exception of Sucrose, because you do need a lot of elemental mastery, but even still, I think you can get that, even if you're not going for set bonuses. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about my baby boy, Razor. Now, the build that they gave him is actually fantastic. They gave him a shit ton of physical resistance, thank God, or physical defense. Thank God. I thought they were gonna give him like a weird elemental recharge weapon and shit, and I was like, oh, please. But no, they gave Razor as much teeth as they could possibly muster, and it is awesome. This is a great training arena to showcase Razor's power. Also, I will say every character that we got to test in the training arena was really optimal. Like, again, using Sucrose, you could really see her potential. We were sharing elemental mastery. We were just smashing the worlds. Good stuff. Razor's no different. They give him a shit ton of physical resistance, which is what you want to build for Razor. Yes, you can build him for elemental electricity, but it is far more valuable, in my opinion, to constantly have some character doing a really, really good amount of flat baseline damage, such as physical damage. For those guys who do not know, physical damage is the white number, basically. So when you do one melee attack and it's that white number that pops up, that's your physical damage from your weapon. So that's what makes Razor such an amazing DPS. You know, where Xiao is really good, but you have to activate his ult, and then you have to queue up a bunch of other abilities. Same can be said for Hu Tao. Razor doesn't need to do any of that, and if you do choose to do that, it just catapults his damage in an incredible way, because Razor's ult is an attack speed buff on top of being an incredible source of elemental reaction. Specifically for if you're dealing with wizard swords or wizard shields or anything like that. The amount of pure electrical elemental output you can do is crazy high. Not only that, but you're dealing your normal physical damage on top of some electricity damage, on top of amplifying your fire rate. And on top of your E, synergizing with the whole kit of Razor. I'm not sure if I should go entirely into it, but Razor is so good because everything feeds into itself, and it's very rare to have in a character. That's why people like Razor so much. Now I will say Razor gets a bad rap for being simplified. You can play him like a dumb idiot, and I feel like that's what people are like, wow, he's so simple, because you can if you want. That's what makes Razor so good, is you can be derpy with him if you need to be, but that's not what you should do. What I mean by this is Razor has certain abilities in his kit, which is every single time you activate his E, he gains a stack. Now, the more stacks you have, the more it shortens his E cooldown, so you can keep slashing and keep outputting electricity even outside of your ult. Not only that, but each time you use your E, you generate particles. So this is kind of a great way to have a character that constantly keeps everyone in having a shit ton of particles, because Razor's E comes back in 3 seconds and produces 3 particles. It's getting pretty nutty. Hopefully you can see that. Now, the thing that makes Razor even better is when you know how to use him in sequence, and this is why I think it's a little frustrating when I hear people say Razor's kind of a derp, not having to pay attention character. Now, the reason why I say that, Razor can do a lot of things, and he can circumnavigate having a really low elemental recharge. Now, how he does that is by using his E and building those stacks, those sigils. Now, yes, they allow you to use more of your E when you have that. But one of the things that Razor also has is when you hold down his E, he consumes all of his sigils, those little sparks floating around you, and you get a huge percentage of your ult when you do this. Now, this can essentially, as long as you're paying attention, actually using Razor, not just mindly like turning off your brain and hitting things, you can back-to-back his ult incredibly easily. Razor gets a massive benefit from skipping his last impact, because it takes such a long time to hit. Even though it has a higher damage multiplication number, it still doesn't account for how long it takes to hit. So for Razor, you want to melee 3 times, even when you're in your ult, hitting really fast, and dodge or jump, basically canceling the last hit because it takes so long to do. Now that last hit can juggle enemies, so there is some sort of intrinsic value in that to some extent. But yes, again, Razor is one of those characters where if you happen to get, if you're a whale or a content creator that can dedicate a ton of time to getting the best artifacts, where you get elemental recharge, critical rate, critical damage, and attack percentage, then yeah, he's a derpy character to play. But if you happen to have reasonable shitty luck, you'll get a shit ton of crit rate, hopefully a decent amount of crit damage, and hopefully a physical damage goblet or something like that, and you'll have to actually play with him cleverly to regenerate his ult by, of course, building up sigils, spending sigils, and then when you're basically in your ult form, keep using E so that when you end your ult, you have sigils to spend again. Now, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the characters. Everyone seems really good, even Noelle, even though I do think she's, again, I don't want to say she's bad. I know some people have been saying that, and that's not true at all. But she does, I think, take a little bit more to kind of finagle around and get everything really in line. But she has been in a much better place ever since the Geo buffs. But ladies and gentlemen, I digress. I cannot wait to talk to you guys more about 1.4 and everything that they've added. I'm super excited. Cannot wait to get into it. I think I will make videos talking about the goofy, fun romance option / dating sim, just because I feel like it's a meme and I want to talk about it and do it alongside you guys. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you guys do enjoy the rest of your day. I will always be here trying to keep you up to date on everything Genshin. 1.4 is going to be a whole weird, goofy blast of mini games and etc. And 1.5, my friends, has some very interesting characters, and I'll be sure to keep you up to date on all things Genshin. Like I said, hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Also, if you happen to like or do anything so sweet to the video or for the video, thank you kindly. Good night, good morning, and goodbye.